until very good. We're live on YouTube and we're now recording. So good evening. I'd like to call the March 1st, 2021 meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Here.
Mrs. Berry?
Here.
Mrs. Pardee?
Here.
Mrs. Weiss?
Here.
Mr. Ertl?
Here.
Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mr. Gould?
Here.
Okay, very good. Will all those who are able please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes from February 16, 2021. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I can make the motion to approve those minutes.
Very good. We have a motion to approve the minutes by Mr. Rock. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ertl. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mrs. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Ertl?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
A very good motion. Minutes are approved. Next up is comments from the audience. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes, with the total time allowed being 15 minutes per meeting unless otherwise permitted by Council Ordinance number 91-25. Is there anyone here who would care to address the city this evening?
Yes.
Mr. Wertheim, if you would state your name and address for the record, and then you may have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, I won't take that long. My name is Stephen Wertheim. I live at 4355 Baintree Road, University Heights, and I'm here tonight as a Reaching Heights board member. As you may know, Reaching Heights is a local nonprofit that works to connect the community to our public schools. I'd like to share 4 pieces of news with you about our school district. The Heights Tigers competed in the state swim championship for the first time in nearly 20 years after the boys relay team broke the Heights High relay and individual records at the Division I district meet. The 200 free relay team is the fastest Heights High relay team in over 5 decades. Heights High swim coach Dan Budin couldn't be more proud and said qualifying for the state championship meet under any circumstance is an incredible accomplishment. That these boys were able to do it in such a difficult year is nothing short of amazing. 2 Heights seniors, Maple Bushner and Xavier Routh, are National Merit Scholarship Finals, which places them in the top 1% of the nation's high school seniors. The National Merit Scholarship Program is an annual academic competition for recognition and college undergraduate scholarship that more than 1.5 million students in the United States enter each year. Equity in education is a focus of the Cleveland Heights University Heights School District, and that topic was the basis for a 2-part series sponsored by the League of Women Voters and the Ohio Department of Education. Both are recorded and are available for viewing at the League of Women Voters Cleveland website. The second part of the panel was a discussion of 4 Ohio public school superintendents and included the CHU8 superintendent, Elizabeth Kirby, who represented us well with the state superintendent of education present. She emphasized the inequity of state funding for our public schools. This is due primarily to the state's position on funding EdChoice vouchers with public school funds, which siphoned off more than $8 million from our school's budget this year. And that is more than any other district in the state. On February 16th, the Board of Education also began meeting in person once again. Board meetings are taking place in the Heights High Auditorium, where members are sitting socially distanced on the stage. And thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wertheim. Is there anybody else who would care to address the city this evening? I see Mrs. Sachs. Would state your name and address for the record. You may have up to 5 minutes.
I'm Sherry Sachs. I live at 14474 Summerfield Road. And I have a question. I'm not sure you can answer it, but maybe if you would be willing to discuss this in executive session afterwards. So as an individual, it was extremely challenging to access a vaccine. And I finally did get to it. I started thinking about our city. And I remember in an earlier meeting, I don't know if it was about the trash collection or some other issue that was being discussed, but I think it was something like 20% of our population in University Heights consists of seniors. And I'm wondering if there's if it makes sense, if it's appropriate to somehow reach out to that segment to see if people were able to access online. It's just ridiculous, the vaccine. And if it's appropriate for the city to somehow help and maybe advocate, there might be some way to do that in a public health manner to connect people who are 1As even, or 1Bs, 65 and above, we'll just call it that, or with certain health conditions, to make sure that they are able to access it. If it's something like, I don't know which committee that would belong on or whatever, I would be very willing to participate in that effort. And, I'm just posing that to council to see if there's any way we can help our constituents connect with the vaccine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cook, did you want to address any of that? Because I know that you've done some work in that area.
Yeah, that's she brings up an excellent point, and actually you're not the only resident of University Heights who's come up with that good suggestion today. Short answer, we've been doing some of that, but I agree with your assessment that there's more we can do. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is, and I'm willing to listen, obviously, to suggestions from anyone. There was, at CVS, they started having vaccines available. Once we got the word of that, we spread the word on Friday. I know some residents were able to sign up then. And basically any information we see, we pass along. We've also been making a point of encouraging children and grandchildren to help their relatives who might not be as internet savvy, but I think even in people who are internet savvy. I like to think myself that I'm internet savvy, but I've had a rough time signing up a relative, and it only took me about 3 or 4 weeks to do it. So yeah, it is a challenge. We're doing some, but yeah, I absolutely think we can do more, and we will try. But that's an excellent suggestion, and you're not the first to think of it.
Should I reach out to you after the meeting, or?
Yeah, shoot me an email, or we can talk tomorrow, and yeah, we can reinvent the wheel. If there's some city, it doesn't even have to be in Ohio, across the country that's doing something that we can do. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to think it's going to start to get easier now that the third vaccine is out, but I don't know. We're not there yet. You're laughing, and I absolutely agree with you. We're not quite there yet. The analogy I keep making with the mayor, and frankly anyone who will listen to me, is I had an easier time personally getting 4 affordable tickets for Hamilton a couple years ago than I had signing up for this vaccine. So yeah, it's skill and it's luck, and it's harder than it needs to be. But yeah, I agree we could do more. And yeah, please reach out. And I have a couple ideas, but we could talk offline about that and whatever we can do to work together. And again, counsel anyone else who any ideas we can do, we will absolutely do it.
Yeah, I feel compelled to also add that while the rollout of the vaccine leaves something to be desired when it comes to what the state is doing, nothing the city can do will change the amount of vaccine that's actually been made available to the state of Ohio. The amount of doses, vaccine simply remains scarce, and I have some numbers I was going to share in the mayor's report, but with the approval of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we're going to have an additional 96,100 doses in Ohio for a total of 448,390 doses this week. And that simply isn't enough. But that is what we have. So part of the problem here is there are a lot more of us who need the vaccine than we'll ever see Hamilton. And if the doses weren't as hard to come by, then signing up wouldn't be so difficult. But nevertheless, anything that we can do to make it better or help somehow, Mr. Cook, if you'd work with Mrs. Sachs on that, that would be great. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would care to address the city this evening? And thank you, Mrs. Sachs, for your comments. Okay. If there is nothing further, then I will move on to the reports and communications from the mayor and the taking of action. Oh, and Mrs. Sachs, I wanted to share the demographically, we're at 11.5% age 65 and over in University Heights. Still significant. Okay. Following the last council meeting, I signed our resolution that the council, the vice mayor, and the mayor co-sponsored together, calling on Governor DeWine and the state of Ohio to include law enforcement officers, as recommended by the CDC, in the 1B group for vaccination. We did this as we lowered our flags at City Hall, as flags across the country so joined, in remembrance of 500,000 dead in this country for so far from COVID-19. Before the next regular council meeting, we will mark the anniversary of the state of emergency here in Ohio. Today, following last week's approval of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, Ohio will receive an additional 96,100 doses for a total of 448,390 doses this week. The governor has announced today a new 1C group, which does include law enforcement officers at last, and also includes other at-risk groups, people with type 1 diabetes, who are pregnant, who have received bone marrow transplants, who have been living with ALS. 1C also includes people working in childcare services, funeral services, and as mentioned, law enforcement and corrections officers. There are some limitations, and the projected size of this group is approximately 240,000 Ohioans. Phase 1C begins this Thursday, March 4th. The Citizens Advisory Committee on Policing Policies will meet this Wednesday at 6 p.m. While the use of force recommendations are still under review, Chief Rogers will present to the committee and seek input on a formalized community advisory committee and a procedural justice policy. Speaking of police, applications are now available for an open competitive entrance exam for the position of patrol officer 3rd grade. Details are available on the city website, including the application itself. Applications are limited to the first 100 received and must be submitted by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. The written exam itself will be Sunday, April 25th, 2021 at 1 p.m. at the former middle school building at 2181 Miramar Boulevard. Please mark your calendars for Monday, April 12th at 7 p.m. for a joint meeting of the city governments of University Heights, Cleveland Heights, as well as the Cleveland Heights University Heights School Board and the Heights Library Board. While we once endeavored to meet quarterly, Efforts to do so have been on hold during the pandemic until now. We do have business of mutual interest to discuss regarding land and facilities and coordinated efforts and services. We will formalize the agenda later this month, and I ask that all council members, all directors, and chiefs be in attendance at this meeting. My thanks to Jim Posh and Jody Serini and the rest of the school board for hosting this first meeting back, which means using their technology for this online meeting. My thanks also to Cleveland Heights Council Vice President, new title, Khalil Sarin, for his role in setting up this meeting, as well as Heights Library Director Nancy Levin for same. We have rescheduled the State of the City address for Thursday, March 18th at 7 p.m. It will be online, and more on how to watch that by Mike Cook in his report later this evening. We postponed the address due to exigent circumstances here at City Hall and in the building and housing departments in particular. Due to contact tracing, we had to quarantine the entire department. This meant the building and housing departments were closed for approximately a week and a half. This, on top of the staffing issues we have had in the departments due to retirements, injuries, illness, among other things. Almost any time would be a good time to look back at where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. Almost. This time instead has been a time for action, not only to restore the level of service in these departments, but to elevate them and then exceed the levels our residents and constituents expect them to be. During the pandemic, given the hiring freeze and the furloughs of 2020, we refrained from filling these positions and restoring these departments. This must end now. In the last 2 weeks, after an initial meeting some time ago, we resumed negotiations with SafeBuild and have reached in principle the arrangements, staffing, and pricing needed to move the departments forward. I've worked on little else these last 2 weeks, and not a moment too soon. Brendan Zach, our interim building, housing, and community development manager, leaves the city at the end of this week for an opportunity elsewhere worthy of his attention and talents. I wish him only the best. I know that some of the most talented people we've attracted here to the city will only spend some time with us doing great work before moving onward and upward. You have a bright future ahead of you, Brendan, and I'm proud that you got your start here in University Heights. Tonight, Council will be hearing from representatives of SafeBuild to go over the services they offer the city of University Heights. I've observed them work in Cleveland Heights on top of the hill. I have received the recommendations from those in Cleveland Heights and in several other cities for whom they deliver professional, high-quality work. As is more fully set forth in the proposal, SafeBuild will provide building official services, building inspectors certified in building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical inspection as needed, a permit administrative assistant, and a housing administrative assistant. These personnel will cover city meetings as well, including BZA, Planning Commission, and ARB, as well as our council meetings as needed. We will keep the 3 housing inspectors that are presently on staff. We will post the position of Housing and Community Development Director to manage and direct the housing programs, community development programs and activities, CDBG supplemental grants and other grant writing, and the city planning functions. Essentially, the position and role previously fulfilled by Patrick Rogan-Myers and in more recent months by Brendan Zach. This position technically has been vacant for a year now, and with SafeBuild here to provide the critical and state-required services needed, we will keep in-house and on staff the administration of rental registration and inspection, the point of sale program, and the exterior maintenance program. Basically, all the programs that are local to our city that we have as a city developed strong public policy in favor of to achieve maintenance and preservation of our aging housing stock so that we may continue to live up to the time-tested, if officially retired moniker, City of Beautiful Homes. Time is of the essence. The administration is asking for authority from the council tonight to enter the contract so that tomorrow we can begin work on the transition and have the first personnel on site even before Mr. Zach departs. We must take advantage of this time to effect the best possible transition and avoid needless disruption of service. So without further ado, thank you, and this concludes my report. First item on the agenda, however, is not safe built, but instead ordinance 2021-09, authorizing permanent appropriations for current and other expenditures of the city of University Heights, Ohio, for the period commencing January 1, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2021. This is on second reading. Mr. Kennedy is excused from tonight's meeting to attend to personal family business. There are, however, no changes to the 2021 budget since the first reading. Thus, unless there is some discussion, I would ask for a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-09. Mr. McConville, should this be adopted on emergency? We do need to have this to the county before the end of the month. It is the first, it's a 31-day month. But what do you think? You're muted, Mr. McConville.
I would suggest that it be adopted on emergency. Yes, Mayor.
Very good. Well, then I would seek a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-09 on emergency.
I'll make a motion if there's no comment on emergency to adopt this.
Very good. We have a motion to adopt on emergency by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Very good. Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, then we will take two votes. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll first? No, I'm sorry. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mr. McConville. You caught me just as I was catching myself. We only need one vote because we have had two readings. So there is no suspension of the rules. Instead, it's simply a motion on emergency taking 5 to pass in order to take effect upon passage and signature. So, Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item B, motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement between the City of University Heights, Ohio and Safe Build Ohio LLC for building department services for the period of 1 year. We have tonight with us the Senior Director of Business Development, Steve Nero of Safe Built. We also have the Regional Operations Manager, John Cheatham. So gentlemen, I would offer you the floor to present.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, council members as well. We appreciate the time and consideration to look at this item this evening. I can tell you that both myself and John and a few other members of our team have spent quite a few hours the past couple of weeks. The mayor wasn't kidding, but we dove into this feet first and went as granular as specific scope with individual roles. So I can tell you we've really dove into a lot of the historical activity that resides in the building department down to specific inspection levels and actual number of permits processed, so that John Cheatham on our side and I were able to put together what we felt was an appropriate team to deliver the services needed within the city. So we're very comfortable in front of you this evening. It is a very thorough agreement with us, but I can tell you it's something that, although the mayor alluded to a few of our clients already in the neighboring area, that we do quite often and quite well. Safe Built is an entity that's been in business for about 30 years across the country. We're involved with relationships like this in over 1,600 communities. Local in Ohio, we're in about 52 communities to date. We have about 45 or so local employees with about 500 in the region. So although a relatively large nationwide firm, John and his team have done a tremendous job working with the local communities surrounding you folks for the past 9 or 10 years or so. So we're extremely excited about this opportunity, as much as ready to start as early as tomorrow should we receive your approval tonight. We appreciate the consideration, and both myself and John Cheatham, the Regional Operations Manager, are here tonight. If there's any questions you'd like us to dive into a little bit more in depth. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Nero. Mr. Cheatham, anything you'd care to add at this time?
I'm basically here to reiterate what Steve said. We have a full team in the area, and we're more than ready to start as soon as you pull the trigger. And service is our absolute key ingredient in the area. And as the mayor has already alluded to, he has checked us out with neighboring communities. We have quite a few in the east and west side of Cleveland, more on the east actually, and quite a few adjacent to you. And we're ready to start. So any questions I'm willing to answer.
Very good. Thank you. Mrs. Weiss, I see you raising your hand. So
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for coming to the meeting tonight. I guess I had a couple questions. I assume that some administrative duties will be, based on the quote, will be done by Safe Built. How does that work? Do you have somebody on site, or is it a call center in your building? How does that work?
So that's a two-part question, our answer. And for inspections being called in, we do have a call center on Aurora Road that covers about 16 communities with full-time staff that all they do is answer the phone all day and schedule inspections. However, we will have 2 full-time administrative staff in your office, 40 hours a week, processing permits and helping with the clerical side of the housing department. So those will be on site, in-house.
And the building, whatever, you're not probably going to call it a building commissioner, but are they on site or are they in your building?
Okay, so they are a combination of both. The mayor used the term as needed. So like the building official, who would be Mr. Fred White, he will be there 4 hours a week, 40 hours a week, whatever he needs to do to get the job done. And when he's working on your stuff, he will basically be in your office available. You know, he's the one that'll attend the meetings, the council, the BZA, the ARB, the planning commission, that sort of thing. He will not sit there at a desk physically 40 hours, just whatever is actually needed. And then the inspectors, they're inspectors that are based out of our Aurora Road department, and they will be handling the inspections as they're called in. We give next day service. So if someone calls in by 4 o'clock, we'll be there the next day performing all the trades inspections. Plan review is done basically remotely by our plans examiners. Most of them work out of their home because of COVID, and it's working very well. But once again, Fred White is the ultimate figure there. And if he needs to meet with someone to go over a set of plans that maybe something wasn't quite right on, that sort of thing, he will be there to meet with them.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had one last question. I guess this is more directed to the mayor. When we saw the chart of hourly rates, do we have a annual estimate on how much this would cost based on hours that we've had in previous years?
I don't think I quite follow your question. Annual.
Like how much that building department would cost, right?
Mhm.
So we put aside in the budget, I'm throwing out numbers here, I don't remember offhand, $600,000, right? Have we annualized what we assume we're going to spend based on those hourly rates?
Not precisely to the point where I could just rattle off those numbers, but I can tell you that the rates that are stated here are competitive with what we have been paying outside folks, especially over the course of the last year on the per inspection basis for plan review and so on. While the housing administrative service rate is higher, and that's for one inspector, the other inspector is included in the 92%/8% split. That also accounts for this person's total benefit package, and I believe is in line with what we have spent historically. I think there will be a review before this one-year contract is up, based upon the fees that are in place and the 92%/8% split, and whether those fees remain appropriate and whether these particular rates are appropriate. And also any adjustment to them is subject to ultimately council approval. So there is no, if you will, noticed and then automatic increases. These are the rates that are here generally track the what we've done, especially in the last year. Mr. Zach, do you happen to have handy the numbers with respect? I know you did write a memo, and I don't have it right in front of me with respect to the loss at which the building department has operated over the last 2 years. And when I say the loss, I mean how much we have spent versus how much we have taken in.
I do not have the offhand. I can pull up the memo if you give me a few minutes, but I can tell you based on the 92.8% fee split, we're looking at a total cost for building commissioner, admin staff, inspections at roughly $163,000 because we budgeted roughly $187,000 in revenue for the building department. But yeah, if you give me just a few minutes, I can pull up that draft memo and get more exacts.
Brendan, if you're able to, I really don't think that this last year it has been an anomaly for everything. I don't think it's a fair representation as compared to, say, the year before when there wasn't a pandemic, when there weren't all so many different changes in staff. If like the year before and the year before that might be a much better thing, because hopefully we're headed into a time that is less chaotic on all fronts.
Sorry to interrupt you. I do have the 2019 numbers in the memo also, so I can give you the 2019 budget, the 2020 budget, and what we're proposing for the 2021.
Okay. Because this last year isn't one to compare to.
Well, right.
Absolutely.
It's only as good as the asterisk we put next to it. The thing with that, though, is that we have had an ample amount of construction and permitted work in the city, even this last year. The trades were always considered essential, and having people here to do the work to permit and inspect was also considered essential. So
we had so much fluctuation, though, as far as staffing, that I don't think it's really a fair. It's not apples to apples by any means. So that's my take on it. That's why I'm looking for the previous year.
Right.
So sorry. So the 2019 actuals for the building department, we had roughly $202,000 in revenue and $434,000 in expenses at a deficit of roughly $231,000. Our 2020 actuals, we had roughly $171,000 in revenue and $313,000 in expenses, again at a deficit of roughly $142,000. Our 2021 proposed budget has roughly $188,000 in revenue and $323,000 in expenses at a deficit of $135,000. So the safe built quote for using the 2021 $187,800 in revenue would have a estimated cost of $172,000 with a surplus of roughly $15,000.
Although we're still going to be paying for housing department staff and city planner and I mean, there's more people other than the safe built to fall into that department budget.
So the way that we have budgeted is that the building and housing are two separate departments. So I those were the building numbers. I don't have the housing numbers offhand. Okay. As of right now, since I will be gone Friday, the only housing department staff we have are the 3 inspectors and then the safe built admin coming in.
Okay. Thank you for having all of that handy there. I appreciate that.
Also, it's worth noting that in 19 we were at peak capacity with the number of employees historically in the department, as we had not only the director of housing and community development and a building commissioner, but we also had across the two departments, 3 administrative assistants, 2 building inspectors, in addition to 3 housing inspectors. And even under Mr. McReynolds and Mr. Grogan Myers, there was a concession that when a couple of those folks left, that we probably wouldn't need to rehire them. And had everything else remained static, there would have been some savings in 19 or going forward from 19, because we probably would not have filled those positions.
I don't think council had heard that before. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or discussion? Mrs. Weiss?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking for the document.
I don't know.
Do we have a binding contract with the building commissioner that we just signed, or was that just an interim contract?
It's dischargeable by either side on 30 days notice. And Mr. Monaco knows that we're having these discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, what accounts for the higher percentage of fees that University Heights would have? I'm seeing reports from the initial contract with Cleveland Heights of a 71%, 29% split, with larger projects at 68% and 32%. So I would think that a larger project may be something like the Warrensville Heights Cedar apartments. Can you talk about the negotiations around the percentage split that we have versus surrounding communities?
Certainly. I believe that the split of 92.8 is appropriate given the amount that our fees actually come in at and the cost of running the smaller department. As you've heard from the numbers that Mr. Zach has put forth, the department does not break even and has not, but Safe Build is confident, I think, with the 92.8 split, that they'll be able to run the department efficiently and do so in a profitable way to them, and we will still save money.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or discussion?
And Mayor, am I reading the extrication clause or cancellation clause correctly at 30 days notice, or what?
It's a 90 day. It's a 90-day termination, Mr. Gould.
Okay. You know, I had some concerns. Perhaps it was an early on type thing with the services provided by a contractor in surrounding communities for this. And the way that has affected citizens in that community with their projects, with the fees that they've been charged, with their satisfaction with the service that their city is providing them. And at least the feeling that the services they received from, for instance, the city of Cleveland Heights, when it was in-house, were better than the quality of service, the level of service that they received once Cleveland Heights switched to Safe Build. You know, that's anecdotally, you know, what's been reported. Mayor, you said you reached out to surrounding communities, the administrators of the surrounding cities. What was their feedback to you?
It was overwhelmingly positive on working with Safe Build. I did speak with Susanna Neerman O'Neill with respect to what you're raising, that there are some folks in Cleveland Heights, and there often are, you know, in any community, that may have preferred it done a certain way. When Mr. Carbone was the building commissioner in Cleveland Heights before Safe Built was there, he did an excellent job running that department in a way that probably nobody has since. And he is he's quite the talent. I know Mr. Carbone, and for a hot minute, I thought we might actually land him before Safe Build came. I was trying to coax him out of retirement because he is that much of a star. It didn't really work out that way. But the thing is that one of the things that O'Neill and others in city government in Cleveland Heights and other places have remarked upon is the flexibility that comes with a Safe Built when it comes to having a volume of work that varies. If you are a community where you could have a lot of permits at once, or a small number of permits, or it widely varies through the year, not just seasonally, but because other projects come up, they have the ability to flex and provide more personnel to deliver the services. And since their payment structure is based upon the percentages, if more activity is happening, they're going to make more money and they'll be able to bring the people in to do the work. In Cleveland Heights, if they had had a static building department, they would not have been able to pull off the speed with which they were able to execute top of the hill once the shovels hit the ground. And when this city has a project of similar volume and magnitude, Safe Built will be able to ramp up in a way that a in-house department would have a much harder time doing. We're not going to hire additional building inspectors ourselves just to lay them off at the end of a project, but Safe Built, because of their size and their approach, their business model, they're able to provide additional people if and when we ever need them. Like when they were saying with Fred White, he can be here 4 hours, he can be here 40 hours. It really depends on our needs, and they will make sure that our needs are covered. And of that we have confidence, and of that knowing that that we are a city that has lots of different things potentially in the pipeline. We want to be ready for anything, and Safe Built puts us in a better position to be ready for anything. Now, if there's something that's romantically lost about having to call a call center to have an inspector come out versus swinging by the old building house and talking to the inspector that way, well, perhaps that will be lost, but there'll be other efficiencies that are gained. And when we're talking about having a call in before 4 and we are going to have somebody out the next day compared to what we've been doing, especially during the pandemic, that will be such a relief to us all as far as being able to deliver high quality, efficient services in a timely way.
Well, heaven help those that have a romantic view of our prior building department, to use your word, Mayor. One other question, and then a brief comment, and then I'll give back the floor. Does this contemplate, and I apologize, I've had a couple hours to review this. I was working today, and so.
And the latest version just came out, so I appreciate everyone's indulgence in taking the time now.
Does this contemplate, for instance, we have a rolling set of inspections, exterior inspections, and there can be fines or fees for individuals who have violations, exterior violations. Does this change at all the structure where people can simply correct that rather than paying? I just don't want our citizens to be in a position where we have monetized a third party to cite them, left and right, whereas we've always viewed those as a way to keep our housing stock strong. That's been our motivation. If a third party like Safe Build is motivated by collecting the maximum amount of fines possible, I don't want them out there ticketing our citizens left and right.
No, I wouldn't either.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. That was going to be my question. You beat me to it. Thank you.
And that should not change. We will be keeping our 3 housing inspectors, the same 3 we've had in-house, and they are the ones that handle the exterior maintenance program and programs like that. So those particular functions are not being turned over to Safe Built. Now, when they go and file for a permit, and that permit is something that when there's something that they need to resolve as far as if the housing inspection is something where they have to pull the permit in order to fix it, well, that's going to be a safe built matter with regard to working with that inspector and so on. But when it comes to our initial housing inspector and our being able to work with them to try to keep cases out of court and to try to work with residents as long as they're responsive and understanding everybody's individual situation, especially during trying economic times, to not put people into housing court if we can avoid it, and to work with them, in a collaborative way to help them work through. Usually if you have a number of violations on a house, they didn't happen overnight. We know you're not going to fix them overnight, but we know that as long as you're making forward progress, that we're going to be able to accommodate that, and that's going to continue. That's not going to change. And I would be concerned too, as you just raised, if we were monetizing and creating an incentive where we would suddenly be not doing that anymore and instead dragging people to housing court and issuing all kinds of fines. I don't think that's neighborly, and I don't think that that's necessary in order to get this work done.
So thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And I would just, I'll say as a final note this, and this is not meant to be a lodging of criticism or complaint, but simply an acknowledgement of the what is. And that is that we've had a matter of hours to review this final agreement, when the discussion has been ongoing for some period of time and the request has gone on for some period of time to see what this might look like. And I, under normal circumstances, would say no. I'm not going to vote for this, given such a small period of time and little time to review. I just don't think I'm doing my due diligence. But we have had, I do trust, your motivations as our mayor to not want angry citizens and contractors and building people, because you're getting the calls. They're not calling council members. So I appreciate and trust the work that you and your staff and the law director have done in making this negotiation. And the eyes of council in the hours that we've had to review this, hopefully we would have seen larger holes. I do, however, with that said, we are in a position where we have lost decades of institutional knowledge from the building department in the past year. Where our, interim director or, Mr. Zach is leaving on Friday. And I think to not have any transition period, which is really the proposition here, do you approve it with 2 hours notice, or do you have your entire housing department unstaffed when a contractor now comes in? And I think that latter proposition is untenable. And so, I am grateful that we have a 90-day termination. It is not a long period of time to be unhappy with an outside party if this, there's something that we miss here. But I'll support this, given the harder situation I think we would be in if we didn't approve this. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Mr. Gould, and I think your assessment is spot on. I would not normally want to present to council something on the timeline that we have, and the attention that we've given over the last 2 weeks to getting this contract to be in this form and presented to you with the latest revision just hours ago is a function of both necessity and an understanding of what needs to be done for continuity of service. And everything you said is spot on. And I appreciate your support of moving forward.
I would echo everything that Councilman Gould has said. This has been a very long process, a very tumultuous 18 months. And, we've been patch upon patch and a hole in the middle, doing the best we can. People leaving, people coming, people leaving. But to his point, even though we just got this literally hours ago and we were all at work, we're having supper and we're having to make a decision right away. Like he said, it's untenable. Our backs are against a wall. I've heard yay and nay about Safe Built in particular, but, council has been suggesting, that you've done what you've done now, that, either explore doing something with other communities of others, Highland Heights and Mayfield Village have done successfully, or to seek out someone like Safe Built. Our citizens deserve it, so I'm going to support it. We really have no choice. We can't just lay open a void and all of this falls into it. So fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Mrs. Weiss.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just reviewing again. It's on short notice. Something else popped up. We have our building department. That's one piece. We have a housing department. I just want to make sure, because I see the housing administrator would be, if they worked 40 hours a week, would be making $93,000 a year. And I understand an upcharge, of course, the Safe Built needs to make money, but I know that our budget was very tight in the housing department, and I want to make sure that that aligns with what was passed.
Including benefits are two previous admin, or I'm sorry, not the two previous admins, the admins before them who were here for multiple years. Their total packages were in the high 60s to low 70s. So, including an upcharge to with the Safe Built, $90,000 may seem like a lot, but with benefits on our side and pay being in the 70s, I believe they're comparable.
But isn't this essentially a third person? Weren't those two people in the building department building administrative assistants?
They served as both building and housing administrative assistants.
I mean, the fact is all three of them swung even where the titles were, on the org chart, those two were on the building side, but the reality was they covered both, and all three covered both.
But we never had three. That's my.
Well, we had a three. We had two in building and one in housing, and all three were cross-trained on on both departments.
And in the new setup,
there would be
two, and then it would be three also.
In the new one, we have the one that's being provided as a permit clerk that's included in the 92-8 split, and then we have the second one, which is compensated, that we compensate Safe Built for, rather, at $45 per hour with a 40-hour minimum work week.
I just want to make sure we stay in budget.
Right, so that 45 an hour isn't for each of them, that's for one of them. The other one included in the 92-8 split.
Okay, so we historically had three, now we're going to have two? When I'm putting building and housing together.
Yes. Yes, we do have, yes.
Okay.
I have another question. And maybe Brendan can help me with this. Where does all of this put us with the program that we've purchased, that we've had for years for Citizen Serve? How does that weave into this?
That's a difficult question. Safe Built will use whichever program we decide to go with, but as the contract stands, I do not believe they would be the ones actually implementing the software.
Elaborate on that. For the purposes of this contract, we're going to use Safe Built's software, and Citizen Serve is still something that the incoming to be posted housing and community development director would likely implement on the housing side first. And then in discussions with Safe Built, we have discussed whether then we would amend the agreement to allow for the implementation of Citizen Serve onto the building department side of things, either in lieu of or to supplement the software that they are bringing in for building. As it stands, Citizen Serve is omitted from the present contract, but we did have discussions with respect to a future amendment to bring that in.
Okay.
Mr. Nero, I believe I've represented that. I believe that's reflective of our discussion. Yes. Okay. So we have made,
Who will train the new housing director, whatever their title is,
on
Citizen Serve?
Citizen Serve has folks that we have been working with who would do that training. So,
Okay, and we have a contract with them presently that will be suspended, or they will charge us additionally to try and yet train more people, or this additional person, I should say.
it's neither. We have made an investment in Citizen Serve. We've made a commitment to following through on that process. I would not say that anybody at the present time has actually been trained on Citizen Serve in the building department because we haven't finished building out the module in either building or housing.
Okay, I just understood. I know I had conversation with Mr. Zach, and he was training the 2 administrative assistants that were there for a time.
He was not training the 2 administrative assistants on Citizen Serve because we don't have it yet. We don't have it built out yet.
Yeah, I mean, that is correct. I spent the last 4 or 5 months working with our contact with Citizen Serve to build it. You know, as I've stated previously, this, it's not like downloading Microsoft Word onto your computer and you type your initials in and it's done.
Right.
It's built out for all of our ordinances to follow them, precisely. So, it is a process. Both of them are built. They're built out in the in more of a grand overview where, after a manager, director, or whoever will be put in charge of implementing this, they have the fine tweaking and then the training with the inspectors. And that's, when the software primarily is finalized, it is then built out for how the inspectors not interpret our ordinances, but how, it makes sense for them to enforce our ordinances. So, in the general sense, the system is built out, but there's still training and there's still really finalizing how the system works. It's completely customizable to the city.
Okay, so it's built out or it's not built out? It's not yet built out? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
No, I
hear you saying 2 different things.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So in the very general sense, you could put a permit in it. It would then follow the process and come out approved. But there's this fine tweaking that needs to be done on both the building and housing side, and that would be done by our inspectors during the training. So what I'm trying to describe is, I understand the process one way. But our point of sale inspector, he has a process that he's worked with. So, during his training, he would say, instead of this popping up there, could it pop up here? So it's the fine tweaking that needs to be done.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that, we recognize that when we are, we have a vision of what we think is the nuts and bolts of how something actually occurs when an inspection happens. And at the same time, then there's the inspector who actually does the inspection who can tell us how it's exactly done. And also, all these things are under kind of pandemic rules still at this point. Like when we do a rental inspection, we're not doing a traditional interior inspection at this time and haven't.
Right. No, I was talking about the actual use of Citizen Serve and who and when and for how much.
Right. Okay.
So can I ask a question on that to follow up to Mrs. Blanco's questioning on the software? So I guess to Scott and Steve, John, excuse me. Do you know Citizen Serve? I don't know if in your field that's a product that's known to you.
We actually, in our cities, use whatever software they have. And while we have a proprietary software, it's only if you want it. And my inspectors use probably 6 or 7 different softwares in the Cleveland area. I am loosely, I might say, because I'm not out there actually involved in the software data input, I am familiar with a number of them. Citizen Serve is definitely one I am familiar with, yes. And so my would have to, obviously, and they're used to doing this, get familiar with your ordinances and the semantics of your city, which they will, but it is no problem for them to learn Citizen Serve. We'll just need access to it on our iPads or iPhones or laptops or whatever.
Is that the type of thing where, I mean, look, we've been trying to get the Citizen Serve product off the ground for some time now. You want to make friends with council, here's how to do it. Is there any way to have that? Do you have the expertise in-house to build that out?
Not Citizen Serve. All the software programs are proprietary, like on our own, which is called Community Core. When we go into a new, say, Sandusky County, for instance, and City of Fremont, we just went in there a few months ago, and they got Community Core from the day we said yes. When I say we, the client, like University Heights, said yes. We had it built out in 3 months and in the field being used. But we have a dedicated team. That is all they do, build that out 40 hours a week, the entire team for each new client. Citizen Serve most likely has a very same type of team. As Brendan said, they have to get all your ordinances, your fee schedules, everything that is peculiar to University Heights into that program. So that, you know, that program, if 5 cities had it, it would be slightly different in each city. But my people can use it, but we cannot help build it out as far as that goes.
So can we make an assignment of administrative personnel to do that data entry for us into Citizen Serve?
Yes. For instance, the permit tech and also the administrative assistant for housing, they would be doing that considerably, probably a good part of their job.
So Mayor, you know, I'm comparing Exhibit B, paragraph 1 to paragraph 16 of the agreement. And so in paragraph B, we have the understanding, Exhibit B, paragraph 1, we have the understanding that if we require Safe Built to use our proprietary program, they will do so. And then in paragraph 16, we have the understanding that what John just said is that Safe Built is going to be using their proprietary software. And what I've heard, and specifically, we'll be using the proprietary software. And what I heard John just say is that we're going to have somebody on this, probably a couple people full-time, 40 hours a week, building this out in a matter of weeks or a month or two. We will have our proprietary software programmed to University Heights with all of your ordinances and the like. And for me, that poses a problem because of what you see in paragraph 16, which is the longer that we are with Safe Built and their proprietary software, the larger and larger that Excel file becomes. So paragraph 16 says is if when we move away, or if we ever move away from Safe Built, we lose access to their proprietary software. And what we have is they will provide us with the data in a CSV file. And so when I see if the agreement expires or is terminated for any reason, all records, documents, notes, data, and other materials maintained or stored in consultants' secure proprietary software pertaining to municipality will be exported into a CSV file and become the property of the municipality. Notwithstanding the preceding, consultants shall own all rights and titles to any consultant-provided software and any improvements or derivative works thereof. And so that gives me some concern that the longer we stay with a proprietary program that is not the proprietary program chosen by the city, the more complicated extrication from that proprietary software will come. And so I just highlight that because I do not want to be in a position where a year, 2 years down the line, we have to hire somebody for 5 months to input, a CSV file into CitizenServe because we never took the time to get it inputted and off the ground. I'd much prefer to maybe, I don't know if that's, a possibility, but, to get the entry happening to CitizenServe rather than proprietary program.
I think I understand what you mean. The problem is CitizenServe is not ready to go. When Safe Built shows up this week, we do not have CitizenServe loaded and ready to go for them to just start using it. And because of that, we are going with the proprietary software that they are familiar with, that they are trained on, and which they can go ahead and start using. And we've also left open the discussion to amend the agreement later to revisit the CitizenServe issue at a later date. And yes, I mean, as you're saying, there will be data that will have to migrate, and there's data now, decades of data that will have to migrate, and much of that data will actually be entered in a far less elegant and artful way than the export file, the export CSV file that we would get from CitizenServe's proprietary product. So
if I could interject, so
please.
With the data migration into CitizenServe, it's not, in Franklin or whichever software we're using, we're going back to 94, finding that permit, and then re-inputting it into CitizenServe. They have script, I believe the term is like script readers and other, things that they use where a computer would match, Franklin or whichever softwares, this is the street number, the street name, road, boulevard, whatever type of permit, so on and so forth. Our Franklin data would be exported into a CSV similar to how Safe Built would do that. And then a script reader would go down that CSV, match the data columns, and then import it directly into whichever software we go to. So it's not a matter of someone sitting down and going through every single permit we have issued in Franklin and redoing that work at a later date.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
In our technology review, are they looking at CitizenServe in that? Susan, are they going to look at that software in that evaluation of our technology? Is CitizenServe in that review?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was muted. They're looking at the integration of police and fire, but I do not believe CitizenServe was included in that. I'm not sure it was even brought up.
It was brought up during the public meeting on the RFP. I know that because I brought it up.
Was it brought up when you met with Ted to design the RFP then also, when he came into your office?
Well, he was never physically in my office, but yes, I've discussed it with Ted. It's really the crux of what you're getting at.
We can certainly look back. Luke, you've got the basic contract. And in fact, that is one thing that I did want to follow up on, where that is and how that's going to be pursued, whether they're not in the city physically, but whether they're whether Ray and Associates has started work and how we're going to include technology advisory in monitoring that.
Yeah, I just got that paperwork today, so
okay.
And with the latest revisions from Mr. McConville, and I have not yet reviewed it. I've been working on this today, so I will be turning my attention to that very shortly.
So I'm just a little confused. I want to make sure I'm clear, because I think what John stated sounded to me like our administrative assistants would be putting information into CitizenServe, but that's not correct, right? They are going to be putting into Safe Built's software.
That's what I heard him say as well. So I'm confused
What
too.
I meant was I made the erroneous assumption that CitizenServe was already in your city based on what I was hearing. Okay. And I just meant whatever you have. We work with BDS, Franklin, Impact, so City Force, Zone Pro, we work with a lot of them. And I just meant that whatever software system you use, our people will use also. And I thought from the way that I was picking up that CitizenServe was already a fait accompli and you already had it. So if you don't have that, you currently have Franklin. We're familiar with Franklin. We use it actually in Cleveland Heights, and they're in the midst of migrating to a new force also. But we'll use whatever you have in place.
But I think the issue with Franklin is that it's a very old version and we upgraded to CitizenServe, which was never actually put into practice. So
Franklin has actually sold, yes.
Yes, yeah.
So Mayor, what are we going to be going to safe build software or are we going to be using CitizenServe?
We're going to be doing both, I think. We're going to be, initially, we're going to be using the safe build software, but the long-term goal, I believe, is still to go to CitizenServe.
Okay.
We have invested in that system, and the county is desirous of our changing over to that system. And in the long view, that is where I expect us to go. On the other hand, I don't want to fall into a sunk cost fallacy. If it turns out that safe build system is better than CitizenServe, then, well, you know, maybe that's what we do. But that's a discussion for another day, and that's why we did not define it expressly in this contract, but had discussions about revisiting this issue at a later date, sooner rather than later. But first, you know, first things first, getting them in here and getting them up and running.
So just to clarify further, Safe Build's going to be coming in and all of our historical data will be going into Safe Build, or will they be inputting that historical data into CitizenServe? I get it that an inspector goes out initially, they're going to be using the Safe Build software because we don't have CitizenServe right now. But is somebody going to be working on CitizenServe?
Well,
Do we have anybody who knows how to do it?
yeah, I don't know if I don't know if it's any of the options you've just put forward versus it being a matter of bringing in a contractor, asking them to achieve a certain result, and how they get there is of less of a concern than the fact that they do get there. And if they're using their own software to get there versus using Franklin to get there, versus using CitizenServe to get there, as a matter of first principles, what we want them to do is the basic function of the building department.
So I want this to happen. I don't want to backtrack, but my point is we have spent well over $100,000 on CitizenServe, and that needs to be clarified in this contract before we approve it, in my mind.
Well, we did discuss it in negotiations, and I do believe that we will do that at a later date, but we specifically left it out of this contract because until they're here and they're working, we did not think that we could nail down a timeline that was appropriate for when to make the switch over.
So I think,
and I do think that we will do it first in the housing department, which was initially what we had always intended to do. And that would still be what we intend to do. And since it's not up and running in the housing department yet, once it is in the housing department, then we can go back to the building department and explore an appropriate timeline for deploying it there.
I think what I would like to do, and I would like to hear other people's opinions, is after 90 days, which is a nice time to see how everything is working, to have some type of clause in the contract to, I don't know how to phrase it legally, to revisit it, or to, you know, to take a second look on how we want to proceed with our software.
Well, I think 90 days would be too soon when the person that will be taking over the implementation on the housing department has not yet been identified. We have not hired that person yet. And that's going to be a process to post the position, hire the person, bring them in, get them acclimated, and then get them to work on
So
I appreciate your commitment to the project. I am committed to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was an investment, a
It
big
is.
investment, yeah.
It is, and I do want to see that through. It's an investment that's been long term. It's an investment that was already underway when I got here,
Mhm.
and it is something that other municipalities that we work with are moving towards, and the county has moved towards. So this is something that I believe will happen and should happen. But I don't want to put a 90-day provision in this contract. I mean, if we say it's a 90-day provision that will, raise the issue, I don't know that we'll be there in 90 days. But we've agreed as a matter of discussion that we are open to the idea of amending the contract to bring this back in at an appropriate time. And I do believe that the appropriate way, and this is the way that we had been intending to do it until disruption occurred and we couldn't do it this way, or that kept us from completing it, was to get it implemented first in the housing side on the housing programs. And once it's implemented there, look at deploying it onto the building side. That was what we were working on with Patrick Grogan Myers when Mr. Grogan Myers ended up leaving.
Luke?
Yes, I was just going to interject, but go ahead and I mean,
Well, you interject and I'll ask my question after your interjection.
let me, what I was going to do was ask John. John, you had indicated before, I think, that you would be willing to utilize whatever software the city preferred. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, and let me just clarify my statement. I think maybe it was misunderstood a little. When I said our two administrative assistants would be putting the data in, I meant the daily data as we progress. We'll put it into whatever software program you're using. And Steve has worked more with the software with the mayor in those talks, so I wasn't really sure where they were at on that. So we do have a very, very good software program that is very low cost comparatively to others. And I think what I'm hearing is that we're willing to use that until you get the Citizen Serve up and running. But on the other hand, if we walk in there today and you want to use Franklin or Impact or City Force or Citizen Serve or whomever you use, our inspectors, our permit techs and admin, plan reviewers will use your software. And that's what I was meaning. We will use whatever you have. We don't have to have our own. We'll use whatever you have available.
So here's what I'd like to do. And John or Steve, if you have any objection, it would make sense for you to articulate it. I think that, assuming for the sake of argument, if this contract is approved tonight, it makes sense for the parties to circle back and negotiate an addendum to the contract immediately that addresses this particular issue, and that would allow the city to direct us, direct Safe Built to utilize Citizen Serve software in a time deemed appropriate by the city. That's a non-economic term. We could do that administratively and then provide council with the evidence of the addendum having been negotiated. Does that sound, is that something you would be amenable to?
Yeah, no objection. And just to clarify further for the team here, you can decide tonight what way you want to proceed for the short term, and that can change tomorrow. That can change 3 weeks from the software standpoint. It doesn't matter to us which way, not what we work with, but what you decide to do in the future. We're amenable to mold to whatever the collective decision is, whatever the council decides when that time is right. If that's to switch to Citizen Serve or to continue using ours, we're fine. That's just our standard operating procedure. So in full, I mean, it's the document's fine as it is. If you want to further clarify with an addendum, we're happy to. That's just how we operate everywhere. The decision is exclusively the councils and the cities on how you'd like to proceed and when you'd like to proceed, which software you'd like to use, and that can change as frequent as you'd like.
I appreciate Mr. Cheatham's and Nero's flexibility on this. I'm more comfortable with this, with Mr. McConville's suggestion.
I think, Luke, the concern, I mean, what I'm hearing from council is that we want citizen serve implemented and that we're frustrated with the timeline that it's taken to implement that process. And we don't want to approve a contract without really pushing this issue, so that if we say that in 180 days, the contractor shall use citizen serve, it will require us either to return to council for the negotiation, the contract to be modified so that we can continue beyond 180 days, or instigate a very swift or a 180-day, transition to citizen serve. In whatever way that needs to happen, if it's a contractor or an employee or a data entry intern or whatever it is, to get that up. I think that what I'm hearing you understand is the frustration that council has around the issue of citizen serve and wanting to get that implemented.
Certainly. I think
the second thing that,
go ahead. I thought you were done.
Yeah, no worries. And then I think that the second issue that I wanted to understand better, Luke, was in a contract like this, I'm seeing a noticing provision, and that the mayor is the individual who's the notice giver on behalf of the city. Usually contracts, we authorize entry into, and I believe it would be the mayor's purview as the administrator to cancel a contract, to extricate us from a contract. What ways, council is getting angry calls from citizens, people aren't happy with this. We were, understanding that there was a 90-day cancellation. What mechanism would council use to cause the termination of the contract if ever there was a disagreement between the administration and council on whether or not the contract should remain in place?
Well,
I have an answer to that, Luke.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's the power of the purse, of course, but you're not going to defund the building department altogether.
Well, paragraph 7 does contemplate that, if I may. If council chose, and I would hope it would never come to this, if there's a fiscal non-appropriation clause that triggers a termination of the agreement. So,
right,
yeah. I'd hate to see it ever come to that, but
and I wouldn't think it would, but I think it's a valid.
It is there. There is that safety valve, if from a council point of view.
Yeah, I suppose that's correct. You could specifically state in an appropriation ordinance that you're not appropriating funds for this particular contract.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, we have a current appropriation that we've just passed for the building and housing departments. How is this tied to that appropriation so that the contract is unable to cause an expenditure beyond that which is currently budgeted for the departments which it is replacing?
I spoke with Mr. Kennedy about that before he left to take care of this family matter, and there is money in the budget for at least 2 months based upon the present appropriations for contracting. There will be an adjustment that we'll need to make ultimately because the budget as passed contemplated not as many contractors and more employees. So some of those lines will have to be adjusted.
But the overall cost,
I believe you
Sorry,
can
go ahead.
amend your appropriations ordinance during the course of the year. The contractual issue would be that you tie the amended appropriation to the notice period so that you're not be in breach.
Mm-hmm.
You'll want to be able to pay for the full term of the contract.
Right, and that was my question at the beginning.
The term can be terminated upon 90 days notice. So you're essentially making sure that you have left within your amended appropriation that the funds to pay for the 90-day notice period.
Right, and that was my question at the beginning, to clarify that the budgeted amount was appropriate, which the mayor said it was, that just the salaries and contracts have to shift those line items.
Right.
And Luke, I think there was some, in a previous contract, completely unrelated to this, you had shared some concern over a paragraph 7-ish clause, in that once the appropriation had been made, that defunding it was an inappropriate cancellation of the contract. Do you share that concern with this contract, or in fact, is it your advice to us that the appropriate, or that defunding the contract would cause the termination under paragraph 7, and the parties contemplate that council has that authority?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, the fact that that language is in the contract, it does give council the authority to, in essence, terminate the contract by withdrawing the appropriation. So I think that by having a particular provision in the contract, the concern is not quite the same.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think we are amenable then, after hearing from Mr. Nero and with what Luke suggested, that we go ahead and execute an addendum, draft and execute an addendum in conjunction with execution of this contract to ensure that Citizen Serve is implemented when the city is ready to implement it, and that the parties agree that they will use it at that time. And it is,
now, wait a minute, though. There is, I did want to go back to Mr. Gould's comment, because from a drafting standpoint and in terms of what, you know, you're asking me as the law director to do, there is a distinction in my mind between a mandatory implementation versus a voluntary implementation. And so, you know, I just need to know what it is that council is requiring.
So, Mayor, I guess I'm just saying directly to you that I'm frustrated with the implementation and the period of time that Citizen Serve has taken to come into implementation. And I want you to create a timeline, whatever it is. If it's not available now, we need this service now, they're going to come in and they're not going to use Citizen Serve right now. I think we all accept that as a possibility. What I want is a date definitive that we will either have Citizen Serve implemented or be able to tie up very quickly thereafter because, oh, this thing happened or we weren't able to get this contractor in, but a definitive, clear timeline from the administration that is linked to this contract of when Citizen Serve will be up and running and able to be used by this contractor, such that it will cause us to come back and re-review that addendum. In, if you want 90 days, it's 90 days. If you want 180 days, 180 days, whatever. Just a period of time that is definitive and causes us to come back if Citizen Serve isn't there.
okay. Well, there are a number of moving parts to that make providing a date today difficult. Part of it is the staffing. Part of it is that you know, the person that's most recently been assigned to the Citizen Serve transition is leaving at the end of the week, and the next person who will take this up has not yet been determined. Probably has not been hired yet, and I don't know how long that is going to take. I can also tell you that there are some, you know, different moving parts here than there were before. One of the reasons Citizen Serve was not implemented by the end of 2019 was because there were folks in the department straddling the two departments that were not interested in the administration and council's vision of having Citizen Serve implemented, and all those people are now gone. So fortunately, they're no longer going to be an issue. And candidly, if they had been more cooperative, it would already be implemented. And candidly, if they'd been more cooperative, maybe they'd still have jobs here. And I think you all know who I mean, because you all got an email from her.
I appreciate whatever moving parts there are, Mayor. I appreciate that they exist. All I want you as our administrator to do is to address the moving parts, examine what they are, and present a timeline to be placed into an addendum, for implementation. Whatever they are, I need to hire people, I need to fire people, I need to transfer people, I need to identify whatever the moving part is.
Right.
Let's identify it, let's examine it, and let's put it into an addendum.
Well, then I'm more comfortable putting dates in an addendum if I know council is giving me the power to ensure that, the council is going to, how should I put this? I'm sure we can come up with some dates, some outside dates by which we would get this done. And, contingent upon, getting the people in here to do it.
Why can't you say 90 days after the hiring of a housing commissioner?
That's that's a good suggestion. I like that. Luke?
Well, Brendan, do you, if you were, everything else being equal, are we 90 days away from putting in citizen serve right now if you were still here and managing the citizen serve transition?
I don't want to say a direct yes or no, solely because I know there are medical issues with a few of our inspectors, and we are expecting, we have one out right now with personal issues, and then we have another one about to go out with personal issues. So the implementation relies on the training of our people, and knowing that some of our people are going to continue to be out, and that we're going to have another person out in the future. That's a determining factor that I think we need to be aware of and really contemplate before we say, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, because the implementation does now rely on teaching the people how to use it, and then the people coming back to us and saying, the process needs to change here or there. So,
So now this has another wrinkle then. Is Safe Built eligible if we don't have housing inspectors available for months and months and months? Does Safe Built have replacements that we can contract out with?
Yes.
Yes.
So, Vice Mayor Weiss, I have some concerns over making it contingent upon a thing which the administration could or could not do. And I hear very clearly what the mayor just said. You want me to implement it in 180 days? I'm sure you'll give me the resources to implement it in 180 days, and I'll hold you to it. What I would prefer to do, whatever the moving parts are, in any organization, people will come, people will go, people will get sick, they will quit, they will retire, they will, a pandemic, whatever it is. Here's what I'm going to do. I'd like to make a motion that we approve. Make a motion that we approve this. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to actually make the motion, but what I'm contemplating doing is making a motion to approve this Safe Built contract with the requirement that the law director draft an addendum agreed to by the parties for the implementation of the Citizen Serve program no later than 180 days. It's 6 months out. We have a lot of time to figure out what happens in a 6-month period of time. If we can't hire and get people in and train, or the resources, whatever they are that are needed. And Mayor, honestly, if you come to us and like, hey, it's a $50,000 contract for data entry and a contractor, then that's what the resources that you've requested. And if we deny it, then it's on us. But at least we've gone through the process of saying this is when it will be done, and it's going to be done by then.
Here's the thing I'm not clear on. If it's an amendment, if it's an addendum, I mean, this 180-day thing, that's an internal thing. I don't know what Safe Built's obligation is in this 180 days, except not to get in the way of it. I mean, what is it that we're asking Safe Built to do with regard to our own internal 180-day deadline?
Correct. And so I think because council is being asked to appropriate additional funds, this is almost like an add-on to an appropriations bill, right? And what we're recognizing is that the language that's inside of the current contract is that SafeBuilt really doesn't care what they use, if it's CitizenServe or elsewhere. They really don't care. And just for SafeBuilt's edification, what you're hearing tonight is a frustration that has nothing really to do, as the mayor just said, with you or your services. But before council, it sounds like, is willing to allow appropriations for your purposes, we are going to address the other concern and frustration that we have, which will require us simply to come back in 180 days to address whether or not SafeServe is up and running. So unfortunately, it doesn't have anything to do with your contract, but it's going to affect your contract. And then I think council's going to require that addendum that you just said that you would agree to in order to appropriate the rest. So I just wanted to explain at least my point of view on why this somewhat unrelated thing is going to cause an addendum to your contract. Luke, does that give you clear instruction as to what council's, or at least what my request is?
It does.
Can I ask one more clarifying question to Brendan? Brendan, with SafeServe, with CitizenServe, who would be inputting information? Would that be a clerical task, or would that be an inspector task? Would that be a director task? Who would be actually inputting that information?
So, it's a few part answer. So for the actual
historical information, not current.
Okay. Yeah, because anything happening after the inputting would be clerical, but historical would be, most of it would be handled by CitizenServe itself. So they have an internal team that, as I explained earlier, they have a scripting software that's going to pull our old data, and they're going to script, address number, street number, boulevard, road, and then so on and so forth.
What's stopping the city to have them do that now?
Yeah.
Because it's working data. We are constantly updating and changing that. So if we did it today, but implemented it 6 months from now, the 6 months of work that we put into Franklin from today to then would not be there.
The integration within 48 hours or within 24 hours, you give them information. I've transferred over software before, and within a week, it gets in, you put kind of everything on hold. You might have to re-enter things in for a week, and that's how it works, correct?
In the very basic sense, I mean, there's a few issues with our data where, on commercial properties, sometimes it's all under one address, but there's 6 entries for each unit, or sometimes each one has a different address. So there is, cleaning and scrubbing of the data.
Although our stock, it's primarily housing stock. We've about this much retail compared to other communities. So I think a lot more of it would be related to homes. Yes.
Yeah. And on that point too, yes, we have 2-family homes that sometimes are put in as up and down, sometimes have separate addresses. And then again, with the apartment buildings too, because the data you get out is only as good as the data you put in. So, just to really ensure that we look at all of the parcel data we have, it's not a clean, cut and paste from system to system.
So for all intents and purposes, we have no one on our team right now that has any historical knowledge. Okay. You unfortunately will be gone next week, and there's a new administrative assistant from SafeBuilt that's coming on, and we have inspectors that have never used the system before. So what is stopping us now to have CitizenServe upload that information?
Because
we're going to have an administrative assistant.
Because if we do it now without having the module built out and without actually using it, then we don't have, if we upload the data today, but it doesn't go live until, July or August, then we're going to have a gap from March 1st all the way.
What you're saying is that our module is not built completely yet.
Correct. It's built in the grand census schemes. As I stated, you can theoretically apply for a point of sale. It would be sent to an inspector, and it's built out in that sense, but it's not built to the point of true data implementation.
And a director needs to be on top of how that getting built. They need to be on top of the updating of the module to completion. Is
Correct.
that what we're waiting for right now?
That would be a part of it, yeah. A big part of it.
Okay, do you see what I'm saying though? We have an administrative assistant now and we have inspectors right now. Okay, we don't have a director now. But what's stopping our progression of citizen service module to be completed? Not the integration of information, the actual module to be complete so we can integrate that information.
So, right now we have the grand program, the grand scheme of the program done. But, as I stated, we need the inspectors and admin staff to be either we need the people in the building to learn the software and then make tweaks as they're learning it. So because, in the past few months where I have been serving in the manager role and the admin role, I have been primarily in the admin role, ensuring that, people's calls are getting returned and emails are getting returned. I haven't been able to dedicate as much time as I would have liked to the citizen server implementation.
Right. In fairness to Brendan, when I assigned him the citizen serve implementation, this was before we lost our admins, and the triage and the necessity of just getting the work done has been a large part of what Brendan's been doing, and that is the day-to-day work that he's describing, as opposed to the long-range work of getting citizen serve implemented. So having stability in those positions, which Safe Built will offer us, will afford a person to be named later the opportunity to do the work that Brendan had set out to do, it started to do, but then was taken away from.
And Steve, is this not something that, you're hearing the conversation about resources and people who can input things and whose role is it to build this out? I mean, one of the nice things about working with a contractor like Safe Build is that, if I want somebody to open mail and this is what I want them to do, and I'm signing a contract with them, then someone from Safe Build will open mail all day. If I want somebody to stand next to the door, 2 feet, no less or no more than 2 feet from the door, and welcome people as they walk in, and that's what you're contracted to do, then that's what you're contracted to do. Is there not a service or a person in your universe of expertise who can assist us with what you're hearing, which is to help implement this Safe Serve or this Citizen Serve program?
That's a great question, Councilmember Golden. And I was actually thinking, if I'm just not familiar with that as far as it stands with Citizen Serve and what it looks like, as far as how far you are along on the implementation timeline. It sounds like there's still a lot of those local nuances and workflows that need to be defined. So I would suggest that someone with local knowledge is probably going to be a little bit better off than, let's say, a consultant. I mean, let's call it what it is. You really need someone that's going to be the middleman here, or women, that's going to navigate all the departments, the infrastructure on your side internally, and with Citizen Serve. But we do it all the time with Community Core. You heard John say, we turned Sandusky County on in a matter of a couple months. That's what we did. We just dedicated a lot of resources to do it. The short answer, I guess the long answer to your short question, do we have somebody that could help? I'm not sure, but I'll find out, because I think if we do, it might be helpful for you. And it would probably just be an hourly arrangement sort of thing. But I just don't know off the top of our head. There isn't someone local that could do it, but maybe this is something we could be a little innovative with and help you, kind of guide you through the process. So I'll have to find out. And I know the mayor and I are going to probably be chatting tomorrow first thing. So that's going to be on my list to get him an update on, because we'd love to help you if we could. It's just, that's a very specific ask, quite frankly. If it was my, and I commend all of you for public service. I serve on my village board where I live. And if this was an issue with my board, I probably would push back to the consultant that you already purchased the software from, to have them provide you with a little bit more guidance. And maybe there's a resource that you haven't tapped yet because you had existing staff. So I think an innovative solution outside of us, if we can help, great. That's probably the easiest option. But another avenue in the interim of not having staff on board, I think a potential idea might be to lean on the consultant a little bit and let them know your situation and say, hey, share your motivation for kicking this off, and maybe there's some things that they could help expedite the process on their own.
Thank you. I'm ready with a motion if, unless there's more discussion.
I'll call for the question. I
Oh,
think that's a
we
good
have a
idea, Mr. Gould.
Okay. Mayor, I would move to authorize the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement between the City of University Heights, Ohio and Safe Build Ohio, LLC for building department services for the period of 1 year, with the requirement that the law director shall draft and the party shall agree to an addendum that CitizenServe be implemented by the city and used by the contractor or returned to council for further action no later than 180 days from the date of that the agreement comes into effect.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. 180 days puts us basically that first meeting back in September, I think. Okay. All right. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry. You're muted.
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Mr. Nero, Mr. Cheatham, pending taking care of the niceties. I'm looking forward to working with you. And thank you, council, for helping make this happen.
Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right. So we then move to item C. You're welcome to stick around, but you don't have to. Item C is a motion to hold an executive session immediately following this regular meeting for purpose of discussing personal, legal, and/or real estate matters. We do not have anything administratively to bring to the council tonight for executive session. So that said, I would suggest we move on then to director's reports. Now, Mr. Kennedy has been excused from the meeting. We do not have a finance report this evening, so we'll go then to Director of Law, Mr. McConville.
No report this evening, Mayor.
Very good. Public Safety, Police, Chief Rogers.
Mayor, no report tonight.
Very good. Public Safety, Fire, Chief Perko.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, just preparing for upcoming Safety Committee meeting. Last meeting, I reported that we have released a interest survey to reconstitute the CERT community response team. We've been getting some favorable responses from that, so we look forward to talking about that and the upcoming entrance exam for fire. End of report. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Chief Perko. Next then is Service, Mr. Picorni. Did we lose Mr. Picorni? I think we may have lost Mr. Picorni.
On mute.
Oh, he's on mute. Yeah, there he is.
Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
just wanted to report to council that the 2020-2 tree pruning program is substantially complete, and we're working on punch list items, stump grinding and removal and restoration of those areas is undergoing. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, that will be complete. The service staff is also working on road repairs. So we're working on the patches left over from utility repairs by Cleveland Water. And we're also working on potholes and that kind of thing around the city. So if anybody has a issue with those, please report them to us. We're doing those daily. And that is the end of my report.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Any questions for Mr. Picorni?
I'll just comment. I want to thank Mr. Picorni for the quick turnaround on Fenwick, the water line issue and the patching of the hole. It became a really big dip, and I want to thank you for coming out there as soon as possible to fix that.
Thank you very much. We do still have to do a permanent repair there. That's only temporary. So when spring comes along, we will dig that up again, replace it with concrete and asphalt overpatch.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Next then is Building Housing Development. Mr. Zach, do you have a report?
I'd just like to thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity at the city. You know, it has been a great learning opportunity, and I am forever thankful for it. But no report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zach. And we wish you only the very best. And I am excited for you. I will miss you and miss what you bring to the city, but I know that you have great things ahead. And for that, I am excited. So
thank you.
Okay. Next then is City Engineer, Mr. Cheney.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just have one item to report today. Mr. Picorni and I were informed last week by Dominion East Oil Gas that they're going to be replacing gas lines in a northwest corner of our city. That would be Cedar Road from Taylor to Washington, from Cedar all the way to Taylor, Taylor Road itself from Washington to Cedar, Wynn Road, and then south on Washington all the way to Edgerton, that first block. They are anticipating starting, that's 14,000 feet of gas lines to be replaced, almost 3 miles. And they anticipate starting sometime in April. And it's going to be a long summer. So.
All right.
End the report.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Any questions for Mr. Cheney about the 14,000 miles of gas line that sprung on us last
Mr. Cheney, can you circulate that map just so we can see where it would go, and how will notice be given to citizens of that work?
It's a good question. I can't circulate the map. You mean to council?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We will have a pre-construction meeting with their contractor. They have not selected a contractor yet. We'll have a pre-construction meeting with them. They do have requirements in their contract for notices to be delivered, hand delivered to all the houses that are affected. Other than that, I mean, I think that's the usual way it's done.
It is. Our street was done a year or two ago, and everybody got a notice, and it was a long summer. But it was great.
So they're not. I was trying to follow the map when you were saying that, Mr. Cheney. They're not dipping south of Silsbee, is that right?
Yeah, they're not going south of Cedar, really, other than that little piece of Washington down to Edgerton. And it's basically at northwest corner, although Raymont and Thane are not included, just the intersections. So.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Next then is Communications and Civic Engagement, Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. As you alluded to in your report, I'll keep it to the one item, which is the rescheduled State of the City address on Thursday, March 18th at 7 p.m. You can watch it as it debuts live, or you can watch it at any time at your convenience on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. It will also be on our website, both the video of the presentation as well as the text of the address. And we'll also send it out to email to all of our subscribers to our email newsletter via, again, it'll be the text of the speech and the speech itself. And it'll be, like the mayor himself, it'll be leaner this year. We've cut out some of the fat. It'll probably be about probably half, maybe a third of what it's been in the past. So, don't expect anyone to watch an hour and a half presentation. It'll be shorter, and I think hopefully everyone's going to enjoy it. That's it.
Yes, and Mr. Cook is holding me to that. So yeah, I don't plan on going on quite as long as I have in the last 2 years prior, and I think for that everyone will be grateful. All right, thank you, Mr. Cook. Any questions for Mr. Cook? All right, that takes us then to Economic Development, Mrs. Drucker.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Drucker. We now turn to reports from standing committees, Building and Housing. Mrs. Blankfeld.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Thomas continues to doodle poll our members the Building and Housing Committee. I think she should probably be giving us a firm date, I would think this week. I know Mr. McConville has completed the ordinance regarding the rental ordinance, and that will be distributed to the members of the committee prior to our meeting.
All right, very good. Thank you,
Thank
Mrs. Community outreach, Mrs. Pardee.
Thank you, Mayor. No report, but concerning the citizen serve inclusion in the REA work, I texted the Technology Advisory Commission Chair, who also does not recall that citizen serve was named specifically at any point. However, by the very nature of the work they're doing, REA should be coming in and talking with everyone at Building and Housing and learning what it is they are doing, what their needs are, and including them in a strategic plan for the future of IT needs. So that would be covered. The reason police and fire were included specifically was because they were proprietary and not included originally. So it was important to specify they were a part of this and to make sure they were integrated into the whole system. So I did want to make that clarification. Thank you.
Well, as I go through the latest draft then of the agreement, I will keep in mind that with respect to whether there's anything further we should be adding. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Pardee. Economic Development, Mr. Rock.
Yes, Mayor. Our committee recently met a little while ago to form a steering committee for the new zoning codes. And so we do have a steering committee, and that involves members of council, Architecture Review Board, Planning Commission, and the Board of Zoning Appeals. And we will meet on March the 9th for an interview of the applicant for the new zoning code. So I'll work with Ms. Drucker to finalize the details on that.
Okay. Very good. Please work with Mrs. Drucker on that and the handling of the bid. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next then is Finance, Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The subcommittee of the Finance Advisory Committee, which is called the Strategic Planning Committee, has a meeting on March 16th. We have already finalized our internal controls. Now we are going to be looking at our capital assets.
Okay, thank you. And as I understand, you have reached out to the various directors with regard to that.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Very good. Recreation, Mr. Ertl.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Safety, Mrs. Berry.
The Citizens Advisory Committee will be meeting on Wednesday at 6. And Chief Rogers is going to be presenting some policies that's going into the manual. We're also hoping to have a safety committee meeting the next week, hopefully either the 8th or the 10th, but we're trying to firm up those dates. And that's my report.
Very good. Thanks. I think 8th or 10th was what we were looking at, and I'm not sure if we finally broke on one or not, but we will very soon, obviously. Okay. Service Utilities, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing right now.
Okay, very good. Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Weiss.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Well then, we are at the conclusion of the regular agenda of the meeting, and it would seem that the thing would be in order at this point would be a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion adjourned by Mrs. Weiss, a second by Mrs. Berry. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Blankfeld.
Aye.
Mrs. Berry.
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ertl.
Aye.
Mr. Rock.
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. We'll be back on, next regular meeting is Monday, March the 15th. Till then, great meeting tonight, and everyone be well and be safe. We're
Good night,
adjourned.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.